Just as Clara went over to the couple to grab the Tupperware, something unexpected happened. George suddenly collapsed, falling right out of his chair. Everyone turned to look at him. He was clutching his stomach, clearly in a lot of pain. "What's wrong with you?" someone asked. George groaned and said something that surprised me. "I just had a little bite of something from the kitchen. Why is my stomach acting up all of a sudden?" "Wait, did you eat that?" Clara blurted out sharply, making me glance at her. "Oh, right, let me introduce myself. My name is Anna. I'm 20 years old and a newlywed housewife. My husband, Ryan, and I got married last year. We're the same age, so we share similar values and interests. We get along really well and are just as happy now as we were before we started dating. But when we got married, there was one thing that worried me a little. When Ryan and I went to visit his parents to give them our wedding greetings, I noticed something about Clara, my mother-in-law. She's very traditional. When you two get married, you'll live here with us, right?" Clara asked, as if it was the obvious thing to do. Ryan and I exchanged glances, then said together, "What? We hadn't even considered that." My husband immediately spoke up. "No, we're planning to live on our own, just the two of us." Clara frowned. "What? But you're the eldest son." Ryan and I didn't know what to say. We felt awkward. Luckily, George stepped in. "That's old-fashioned thinking," he said. "Let Ryan and Anna live how they want." That seemed to calm Clara down for the moment, but another issue quickly came up. Ryan and I had decided not to have a wedding ceremony. "We don't want anything too elaborate," we said. Instead, we wanted to save them money for traveling and other experiences. When we told his parents about this, Clara's face turned pale again. "What do you mean you're not having a wedding?" As I mentioned, Clara is very traditional. She was completely against the idea of skipping the ceremony. "How can we explain to the family that the eldest son isn't having a proper wedding?" she said, clearly upset. To Clara, being the eldest son meant Ryan had to follow certain traditions, and skipping the wedding just didn't fit her expectations. Thankfully, George stepped in to support us again. "None of the relatives care much about the wedding," George told us. "They just see it as a chance to enjoy a nice meal. A few months later, they'll forget there wasn't a wedding, so, if you don't want one, that's fine." George was understanding and respected our decision. Thanks to him, we didn't have to follow Clara's old-fashioned expectations. Though Clara wasn't thrilled, we got married without a wedding and started our life together in our own place. I became a housewife to support Ryan, and honestly, I loved it. Taking care of the house, making lunch, and cooking dinner for my husband brought me so much happiness. I even looked forward to the idea of having kids someday, imagining how much fun it would be. About 2 months after we got married, Ryan's parents invited us over. Given our previous disagreements with Clara, both Ryan and I were a bit hesitant, but since we hadn't visited them since the wedding, we figured it was time to go. I prepared myself for Clara to give me a hard time, but to my surprise, she didn't. Instead, she was warm and kind. "If you ever need help with housework or cooking, just let me know," she offered. "I've got tons of recipes, and I'll teach you everything I've learned." Clara loved to cook and told us about how she often hosted parties for her neighbors, which she claimed were always a big hit. That day, she made us a home-cooked meal, and it was incredible, delicious, and full of flavor. Both Clara and George were so kind during the visit that all my worries melted away. Ryan felt the same way. "It won't hurt to visit them every now and then," he said as we left. 3 months later, his parents invited us back, this time for a dinner party at their house. Since our last visit had gone so well, we happily agreed. When we arrived, Clara surprised us again. She had prepared dishes that looked like they belonged in a fancy restaurant. Even Ryan was impressed. "Wow, Mom, you're getting so good at cooking. You never made food like this when I was growing up. This is amazing." "Thank you for preparing all these amazing dishes," I said with a smile. Clara beamed with joy and told me to eat as much as I liked. The evening was pleasant, but later that night, I started having severe stomach pains. As I sat in the bathroom, feeling worse by the second, I began to feel faint. "Anna, are you okay?" I heard Ryan's voice, but it quickly faded. When I woke up, I found myself in a hospital bed. Ryan had called an ambulance and brought me here. The doctor said they couldn't figure out what caused it. It wasn't food poisoning, they assured me. The only thing I could think of was the pasta I had for lunch. It might have had too much olive oil. Still, we never found out the real cause. After receiving in 4 and getting some rest, I felt better. Ryan and I went home, but I couldn't shake the nagging question, what just happened? For a while, I was fine, until 2 months later, the same thing happened again. I felt sick out of nowhere, and just like before, it happened after eating at Clara and George's house. Could the food have gone bad? I wondered, but Ryan, who had eaten the same dishes, was perfectly fine. Then, about a month later, it happened again, another stomachache after dinner at my in-laws' house. Frustrated, I invited my friend Lily over for lunch to talk about it. Do you think it's stress? She suggested. Her question made me pause. I thought I'd been relaxed and open-minded about my relationship with Clara, but maybe I wasn't. Perhaps, deep down, I was more anxious around her than I realized. Ryan was also worried. We should avoid visiting my parents' house for a while, he said. This only happens when we eat there. It has to be connected to my mom's cooking. I wonder if that's true, I replied, unsure. After that, Clara invited us for dinner several times, but Ryan politely declined, wanting to protect me. However, a few weeks later, we received an invitation we couldn't turn down. It was for Ryan's brother, Eric, and his wife's wedding greeting. I felt nervous since I'd been feeling much better by not visiting my in-laws. You don't have to eat much, Ryan reassured me, just take it easy. When the day arrived, Clara greeted me warmly, and everything seemed fine. As long as we were just talking, I felt completely normal. Maybe it really is something in the food, I thought to myself. Eric and his wife soon arrived, and we all enjoyed a pleasant conversation. Meanwhile, Clara was busy in the kitchen, expertly preparing dish after dish. As the table filled with beautiful, delicious-looking food, I couldn't help but admire her cooking skills. But the lingering question remained, why did I keep getting sick? Once we sat down, Clara looked at me and smiled. Anna, you said you liked this dish, didn't you? I made it especially good today. Please try some, she said, offering me a plate. I hesitated, unsure of what to do. Ryan stepped in. Anna isn't feeling well today. Let her decide what she wants to eat. But Clara gently insisted. Well, this small portion should be okay, right? She placed a small plate in front of me. Before I could respond, Eric spoke up. Anna, if you're not feeling well, don't force yourself to eat. You've already greeted us, so if you need to go home and rest, that's completely fine. It turned out Ryan had told Eric and his wife about everything that had been happening. It seemed like they were trying to help me. Clara must have realized she couldn't force me to eat her food. Well, I'll pack it in a Tupperware for you to take home, she said. I couldn't understand why she was so eager for me to eat it, but I figured that if I took it home, I wouldn't have to eat it right away. Okay, thank you, I said. Just as Clara walked over to get the Tupperware, George suddenly collapsed, falling out of his chair. We all froze and stared at him. He was clutching his stomach, clearly in pain. What's wrong with you? Someone asked. He hadn't even touched his food yet. What's going on? I thought. Then, George said something that shocked us. I just had a little bit of food from the kitchen. Why is my stomach hurting so badly? Did you eat some of that? Clara asked, her voice tense. I couldn't ignore the way she asked. Ryan quickly called an ambulance. Clara went with George to the hospital, and we were left standing there, still stunned. But I couldn't stop thinking about what Clara had said earlier. It seemed like my brother-in-law's wife had overheard too. We all wondered if there was something wrong with the food. So, we decided to check out the kitchen where Clara had been cooking, and that's when we discovered something strange. We drove straight to the hospital where George had been taken. As soon as we arrived and made it to his room, we heard voices inside. The doctor was asking Clara if she had any idea what had caused George's condition. Clara replied, I have no idea. We walked in, and Clara looked flustered when she saw us. Oh, you came all the way here? It's okay, as long as I'm here, everything will be fine, she said. But we weren't about to let this go. I need to talk to you, I said, stepping toward her. Ryan, Eric, and his wife followed me. What is going on with you two? George seemed to be doing a little better, and his color had returned to normal. But the doctor still couldn't figure out what was wrong. Apparently, George had stayed conscious for a while after arriving at the hospital. After going to the bathroom several times, George became dehydrated and completely lost consciousness. I looked Clara in the eye, pulled something out of my bag, and showed it to her. When she saw it, her face went pale. "Do you recognize this?" I asked. "Well, what is it?" she said, trying to act like she didn't know. "This is a laxative," I said firmly. I don't know why there was so much powdered laxative in the kitchen. Clara went silent. Then the doctor spoke up. "It looks like he had these symptoms from ingesting a lot of loxa leaves. We'll do some tests to confirm. By the way, if loxa leaves are found, I'll need to ask him when he ate them. If he doesn't know, it means someone intentionally gave them to him, and that could lead to a charge of injury." Clara's face went white. "No, it's not like that. I didn't try to make him eat that food, it was just negligence," she stammered. Ryan stepped in. "Then who were you trying to feed it to?" It's not," Clara trailed off. "If you're not going to tell us, we'll call the police and have them investigate," Ryan said firmly. "Okay, I got it," Clara finally said, and then she confessed. "It was all for Anna," she admitted. "I was going to punish her by feeding her loxa leaf meals." "What do you mean, punish me? What did I do to you?" I asked, shocked. "Because my son married you, he's become a bad son. You didn't live with us, and you didn't have a wedding. You persuaded him to do all of that. That's why you're my enemy." "That's completely unfair," I shot back. "Ryan and I made those decisions together." "Is that why you've been putting loxa leaves in the food you've been serving me?" I asked. "It wasn't a lot of loxa leaves before, that's why you've been fine." "Don't be ridiculous, I've even been rushed to the emergency room. How can you say it wasn't a lot?" Ryan and Eric both spoke up in my defense, pointing fingers at Clara. "I can't forgive you for doing that to Anna," Ryan shouted. "I'd be furious too if my future wife were treated like this," Eric added. Both of them declared that they were disowning their mother. Clara started to shrink back, begging them not to say such things. Then, George, who had been listening halfway through, spoke up. He seemed to have woken up just in time to hear everything. "You've done something terrible out of your own selfishness," George said. "You should be arrested by the police. I'm so disappointed in you." "Even you're saying that? You're not going to divorce me, are you?" Clara asked, her voice full of panic. "That's not enough," George replied. "You're going to pay Anna $30,000, and you'll have to work for it. I won't be helping you at all." "Oh no, that's impossible. I've been a stay-at-home mom my whole life." "Shut up. If you don't accept these terms, I'll divorce you immediately and turn you over to the police," George said firmly. "What?" Clara had no choice but to work hard and pay me the $30,000. Now, she's working a lot, paying me little by little. George is watching over her to make sure she doesn't cheat. All her salary is going toward repaying me. She seems exhausted, but I think she deserves it because of everything she did to me. Meanwhile, Ryan and I are living happily. George and Ryan told me that I don't need to see Clara again, and I feel so much better now. I've been through a lot, but with Ryan and George by my side, I know I'll be okay no matter what happens. Feeding someone food with loxa leaves is a crime, right? Isn't it a little much for a mother-in-law to do something like that without hesitation? I still don't understand why George married someone like Clara. But Ryan and Eric seem like good people. Maybe Clara was decent once too. I don't know the full story, but the punishment for Clara seems fair. I hope she works hard and pays me the $30,000. And I hope Ryan and I live happily ever after.